Okay, so you're unmuted there now, Pat, so we're good to go. Okay, so welcome to tonight's webinar in association with Rebel Coaching, the underage section of Cork GA. Tonight's webinar will be available to watch back on YouTube and will be on podcast form from tomorrow morning on rebelcoaching.com website. I'm delighted to welcome Pat Culhane, who is National Games Development Officer with the GA for the past 9 years, where he manages programs for introducing children to Gaelic games in clubs and primary schools throughout Ireland. Prior to Croke Park, Pat was the Hurling Development Officer in Limerick City for 6 years. Pat is also currently a Doctor of Management candidate in Glasgow Caledonian University. And we're delighted to welcome Pat here this evening for this presentation entitled, Why Do I Coach? Thanks very much for joining us this evening, Pat. I know you have a few slides for the presentation, so over to you.
Hello, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and I'm taking great heart from all the online learning engagement by Gaelic Games coaches in recent months. Fair play to you and to Rebel OG for this positive initiative. I'm very grateful for everybody's time, for giving up their precious time this evening to listen to me. I hope you won't be disappointed. Just a little quick disclaimer, all views are my own this evening. They're not that of my employer or the university or anybody else. So, what's the presentation about tonight? It's about called Why Do I Coach? And it's not about why I, Pat Culhane, coach. It's about asking yourself why you coach. I don't believe that most of us are motivated by saying you should do this, you should do that, or you should do it in a particular way. So that's not the approach I'm going to take tonight. I'm just going to try and help people a little bit to, maybe think about why they coach. Most of the time when we think about coaching or coach education, it's in we ask the what questions. So, like, what do I coach? What behaviours do the children have that I coach? What are my own behaviours? How can I do all of those things better as well? And there's loads of how questions. How do I coach the skills better? How do I communicate better? How do I motivate children better? And, I think seeking such answers, seeking such what questions and how questions answers is absolutely fine. And I more power to coaches who invest their time in develop themselves as coaches. But I've rarely met in my 30 odd years involvement in sport as a player and as a coach and a development officer, I've seldom met or encountered coaches who seriously stopped and asked themselves, why do I do all of this? Why am I putting myself forward at the AGM when nobody else will? Why am I racing home from work to deal with the complexity of a group of children and their parents? Why am I getting out of bed early on a Saturday morning in the lashing rain to get down to the pitch a half an hour earlier than everybody else to set up the activities and the exercises for the children to enjoy themselves for the hour? Why do people do this? Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche said that, I'm skipping a slide now. He said that he who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So tonight is about asking yourself why you coach. And a lot of the research, and probably more so my own experience of coaching and I'm working as a coach developer, as a tutor with the GA over the last 15, 16 years. It's a question I ask people, a lot of the time. I've asked dozens and dozens of coaches over the years, why do you do this? And the typical responses are, because I do it for the kids. I coach for the kids because I enjoy it. Somebody had to do it. Nobody else would. I want to give something back. That's the biggest main reason I hear from coaches. I want to give something back to the community, to the club, to the parish. And another big kind of generic response I hear is, I love the game and I love the sport. And all of these are perfectly rational responses. They're absolutely they're absolutely true and they're well intentioned and all the rest of it. But I suppose what I'm trying to get at tonight is the meaning of children's sport. It's the meaning of it at its deepest level. and the role of the coach within children's sport. So I skipped onto that slide already, and here, what do we see? We see children playing soccer in Syria, in war-torn Syria, and objectively, we see children chasing and kicking a piece of leather around, buildings crumbling in the background. Life is pretty hard there, I'd imagine. But it doesn't mean anything really just to see people chasing a piece of leather around, kicking it into a string net, or in this case, probably, a set of jumpers on the ground. What does that mean? On an objective, kind of a rational level, it really doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, to these children, it means absolutely everything. At a deeper, subjective level, that of the heart and soul, we see children playing, really playing on their terms, the kind of play that allows children for those brief periods to feel in charge of their own lives, which is crucial for developing self-confidence and resilience. We see children participating. No subs, the pitch size is about right, and the rules are too, I'd imagine. Children feel part of something bigger than themselves. We see children trying passionately. Sport demands a physical endurance that reflects our desire to keep going, to keep living. My mother, who was gravely ill in hospital just before Christmas, insisted on sitting up every day, brushing her hair and putting on her makeup. The chance to try should never be taken away from children in pursuit of results. What else do we see? And I think this is the most crucial one for me. We also see the image. In this image, we see children imagining. Maybe they're Lionel Messi. Maybe they're somebody else. As a child, I relived Kieran Carey's famous point against Clare in 1996. Everybody has relived something in a sporting context in their life. Everybody on the call tonight, I'd imagine, at one stage or another. We are imagining creatures, human beings, adults and children. We often think it's just children, but I think adults are just as imaginative. Right now, as each of you participate in this webinar, there's a rich tapestry of dreams going on as you're sitting there. Think about movies, art and music, how they engage people's imagination, and people want to be engaged in that way. Another thing I see in this image is that nothing is measured in the game, maybe apart from the score that the children keep. And do they really care about the score the next day? Probably not. The most important things you experience in life cannot be measured. There is no measurement for marriage, raising children, or the sorrow of loss. Love can't be measured, and neither can actual play. The greatest things in life are not in reality. They come from our imagination. So I love this quote from England hockey. I see Brian Cuthbert used it a few weeks ago, column on this podcast. And it says that the game is the teacher, the pitch is the classroom, and the coach is the facilitator. There's been a lot around games-based coaching, which is really, really important. And, being out there on the pitch and learning through the game, and coaches, teaching the game through the game itself. It's just the last piece there that I want to concentrate on, which is the role of the coach as a facilitator. What are we trying to facilitate? And more importantly, why are we facilitating it? The fundamental meaning of coaching, as I see it, is to facilitate children's play, trying and imagining. A coach can facilitate children to rise above life and into a place of magic, especially the child who may be from a difficult background or disadvantaged in some way. The little child who comes down to the pitch from that kind of background is magic in itself. So you have that hour in the week or 2 hours in the week to lift people out of the kind of mundanity of life and into the marvelous. Don't underestimate your role in that regard. It's really, really, really important. And I suppose ultimately, what are we trying to do as coaches? Why are we coaching? Why am I coaching? Well, I can tell you that I find a lot of meaning in this quote from American poet Maya Angelou. She said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And just moving on to the next slide, you know, a few things that I suppose inspire me and influence why I coach. Again, I'm not going into the what we coach or how we coach it. That stuff is really important, and the bulk of time is spent on that. This again is about why I coach, why I coach. You know, coaching is a deeply personal process, and you know, some of the stuff I'm going to share with you, you may have seen before. Some of it you mightn't. Some of it you might agree with. Some of it you mightn't. At the end of the day, it's meaningful to me, and I hope that this will be in some way meaningful to you as well. So a guy I love in terms of play, I mentioned play earlier and facilitating play. I really love the work of a guy called Dr. Peter Gray. He's dedicated his life basically to researching play and to educate people around what he describes as play, which is often at odds, I would say, around the practice of play that we you know consider as coaches in youth sport in Ireland. So I just have a very short clip around what he defines as play, and just listen to the passion in his voice.
I'm a researcher who studies play from a biological evolutionary perspective. I'm interested.
Sorry, Pat, you'll have to take off the mute. He's gone mute as well there since you muted, sorry.
Sorry.
Now, if you walk through most neighborhoods in the United States, what you find, if you find kids outdoors at all, is they're wearing uniforms, they're on some kind of manicured field, they're following the directions of adult coaches while their parents are sitting on the sidelines cheering their every move. We call this play sometimes, but it isn't by any play researcher's definition. It's not really play. Play, by definition, is self-controlled and self-directed. It's the self-directed aspect of nature, of play, that gives it its educative power. Play is where children learn that they're in control of their own life. It's really the only place they are in control of their own life. When we take that away, we don't give them the chance to learn how to control their own life. Play is where they learn to solve their own problems and learn, therefore, that the world is not so scary after all. Play is where they experience joy and they learn the world is not so depressing after all. Play is where they learn to get along with peers and see from others' points of view and practice empathy and get over narcissism. Play is by definition creative and innovative. Of course, if you take away play, all these things are going to go down. And yet, the hue and cry that we hear everywhere is for more school, not for more play. And we've really got to change that.
Again, on a rational level, you know, his stuff is, can you hear me, Colin?
Yeah, perfect, Pat.
Great. On a rational level, you know, you might or disagree or agree with his work, but there's something about his sincerity and his passion that I connect to with him. Another guy or two guys that I've worked that I love is Decky and Ryan. Self-determination theory. It's been around a lot. It's concerned with the motivation behind choices people make with external influence and interference. Without external influence and interference, it includes research done on sports coaching. At the heart of it is autonomy, and you know, you facilitating a training session or an environment, some people call it, around autonomy support. You know, allowing the child a space, like those children were in Spiria, to set up their own games and to just play, as just defined there by Dr. Gray. So again, I have a very short video on this. I've just picked out a couple of key points from Edward Decky on this really important theory.
For more than 30 years, my best friend Rich Ryan and I have been working on a theory of motivation that we call self-determination theory. And the distinction that is most important for us is between controlled motivation and autonomous motivation. Controlled motivation is essentially the carrot and stick. When you're controlled in your motivation, you've either been seduced into behaving, perhaps by an offer of a reward, or coerced into behaving, perhaps by threat of punishment. But in either of those cases, you feel a lot of pressure. And within you is a sense of tension and anxiety. And all of those things have negative consequences for your performance and well-being. When coaches are more autonomy supportive, the research shows their athletes persist longer at the activity, they feel better about themselves while doing it, and they work together better as a team. So what am I trying to say in all this? The take-home message is, don't ask how you can motivate other people. That's the wrong way to think about it. Instead, ask, how can you create the conditions within which other people will motivate themselves? And the answer, quite simply, is autonomy support.
Yeah, and again, you see the passion in his voice. Another guy I came across in my late 20s was a guy called Alain De Botton. He's a Swiss philosopher. He wrote a book, kind of a controversial book called Status Anxiety. And, you know, his basic argument here is that status anxiety, a lot of it revolves around the anxiety or revolves around people's perception of success. And I know certainly most of my life as a student and as a player of many sports, particularly hurling and Gaelic football, I always perceived and took success at face value. So who finished top of the class, you know, who was the best hurler, who won the league, who won the championship, who had the biggest house, who had the biggest car, all that kind of stuff. And it's probably not until I read this book that I kind of said, this guy is onto something. This guy makes an alternative argument to what success really is at its deepest level. And I just, again, have a very, very short little video around what his definition of success is, and I hope you enjoy it.
What I think I've been talking about really is success and failure. And one of the interesting things about success is that we think we know what it means. If I said to you that there's somebody behind the screen who's very, very successful, certain ideas would immediately come to mind. You would think that person might have made a lot of money, achieved renown in some field. My own theory of success, and I'm somebody who's very interested in success. I really want to be successful. I'm always thinking, how can I be more successful? But as I get older, I'm also very nuanced about what that word success might mean. Here's an insight that I've had about success. You can't be successful at everything. We hear a lot about talk about work-life balance nonsense. You can't have it all. You can't. So any vision of success has to admit what it's losing out on, where the element of loss is. And I think any wise life will accept, as I say, that there's going to be an element where we're not succeeding. And the thing about a successful life is that a lot of the time our ideas of what it would mean to live successfully are not our own. They're sucked in from other people, chiefly if you're a man, your father, and if you're a woman, your mother. Psychoanalysis has been drumming home this message for about 80 years. No one's quite listening hard enough, but I very much believe that that's true. And we also suck in messages from everything from the television to advertising to marketing, etc. These are hugely powerful forces that define what we want and how we view ourselves. When we're told that banking is a very respectable profession, a lot of us want to go into banking. When banking is no longer so respectable, we lose interest in banking. We are highly open to suggestion. So what I want to argue for is not that we should give up on our ideas of success, but we should make sure that they are our own. We should focus in on our ideas and make sure that we own them, that we are truly the authors of our own ambitions, because it's bad enough not getting what you want, but it's even worse to have an idea of what it is you want and find out at the end of the journey that it isn't, in fact, what you wanted all along.
Pat, just on that, Pat, that's really interesting concept in that from a GA perspective, success for coaches is 99.9% of the time did they win the championship for older age groups, or did they win all their games, younger age groups. But success, I suppose, if everybody goes with that, I suppose, viewpoint, then there's a lot of very unsuccessful people.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of coaches, I suppose, would like maximizing your ability with a particular group or retention of players. Like there's success in that too, isn't there?
Yeah, it's what an interesting point. I heard a talk recently, and the guy giving the talk said that 10,000 people run the London Marathon, or 20,000, something like that, every year, the London Marathon. And so if there's only one winner, does that mean there's 999 losers? You know, and I'm going to come on to a little bit more in the presentation, but like we live in a very polarized society, you know, Republican, Democrat, you know, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, although they've come together surprisingly. You know, you win, you lose. You know, my mother, Colm, would have always said that poor misfortunate. You know, they're the exact words she used. If there was any kind of someone who was maybe disadvantaged or injured or sick or something, I can hear it in my ears. You know, the poor misfortunate. The word we use, you know, as part of the vernacular now is loser. You know, and we do this and loser, and it's just horrible. You know, and I think that kind of extreme labeling or perceived kind of labeling of losing, and you know, even the translation of that into the emotional outpouring of losing a county under 12B final, you know, and there's young fellas thrown down in the pitch and they're absolutely devastated. On one level, it's great that they're so invested in that actual game, but like they're mirroring, you know, Paul Gascoigne and whoever's of today, where we're living in a kind of a polarized world that's kind of more extreme. I'll come back to that again in a minute.
No, and actually, I love that marathon analogy, because for a lot of people, just running the marathon is a success. And
exactly.
That's, if we all viewed the rest of the world and the rest of sport the same as people view that, it would be a lot better place. But go on, carry on.
Thanks. So yeah, this guy, you know, I love. He's a guy called Viktor Frankl. Some of you have probably heard of him. He survived 4 prisoner of war camps. He's a medical doctor, and he just before World War II, before the Holocaust, he had a manuscript written out. There was no Microsoft Cloud or Google Drive back then. He had a book written out, and it was around, you know, man's search for meaning in life, and you know what motivates people and all that kind of stuff. But the Nazis came, raided his home or his workplace, and they were burned. They were lost forever. And his dream, I suppose, of writing that book, you know, kind of kept him going through 4 prisoner of war camps. And what he observed in the prisoner of war camps actually was there was 3 types of people. There was people that were, and it doesn't sound nice, but they were sent to their death. This happened, and they had no choice about it. But where people some way had a choice about it, he said that there were some people that retained meaning in their life. His was the fact that he wanted to write a book when he got out, and there was others that just gave up. And he said, you know, ultimately what he learned through that horrific experience was that people create their own meanings in their own life, as mundane as the meaning may be. Like you said, Colm, the person who, you know, last year couldn't even walk to the shop, but now they're doing a 5K run, and they move on and they do a marathon. It might take them 5 hours, but they have won the world championships. They've won the Olympic gold medal. So I suppose success is relative to the individual. You know, a friend of mine as well is a CEO of a very big technology company in Ireland, but he struggles, as in, he laughs. He says he struggles to make his local junior soccer team at home. You know, he's kind of a nobody there. So, you know, success is contextual. It's relative to the individual, not the whole of the individual's life, but the various elements of the individual's life. And Viktor Frankl, and that book, by the way, Man's Search for Meaning, is probably the best book I've ever read. There's a free audio version of it on YouTube. Just listen to it. It's 4 hours or so. It's brilliant. But he said about success, he said that you shouldn't aim at success. The more you aim at it and the more you make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a course greater than oneself. And that's what I was talking about there in terms of the children in Syria. They're part of something bigger than themselves. They're not reflecting on their own individual selves or their own ego. They're lost in the joy of just playing as Lionel Messi or somebody else. So just to move on from that, and Viktor Frankl stuff, you know, another guy, and we've all seen this before, I'm sure, most people, is John Wooden, the famous basketball coach. He said that success is peace of mind attained only through self-satisfaction and knowing you've made the effort to do the best of what you're capable. And I've put my own spin on it, and it reads as such, and it's similar, but there's one subtle difference, and I think it's crucial. Success is peace of mind deriving from self-satisfaction, knowing that you are making the effort, given the context. Those 3 words there are crucial, given the context, to do the best that you are capable of. And a really important part for me, and is not at the unnecessary expense of anybody else. You shouldn't really, feel successful, I would say, by walking all over people or cutting corners or cheating. We abhor cheating, and goes completely against the honor of the game and the sport. So that's my version of success. I kind of a more condensed version of it is success is not equals to winning. It can be winning. That's crucial. The not equals to sign is there for a reason. It just means that a lot of society, like Alain De Botton said, equate success with winning, finishing first, big house, big job, whatever. But it doesn't always equate to it. It can be. I mean, there's nothing better. I won a Harty Cup and an All-Ireland school championship in '99, a couple of county championships with my club in Limerick. Wonderful, wonderful times. The first time in 43 years we were out in 1998. I was a minor, and there was about a dozen bonfires throughout the parish. Since the first time we won the county senior championship. Winning is fantastic. I love winning. I strive to be successful and to win myself, but you have to kind of realize, and you probably realize it when you get a little bit older in life, and fate kind of touches you on the shoulder, as it I'm sure it has all of us, that you start to lose stuff, and it's all, you kind of said, success really isn't about winning all the time. It's about just having a normal day, being able to get up, get through your day, you and your loved ones, your colleagues and so on, remain healthy, especially in times like this, and then to go to bed at night with relative peace of mind. That's success for me. Success is equals to peace of mind. That's kind of more of a life mantra almost than a coaching mantra, but it's something I definitely carry into my coaching, and I can't wait to get back when the time is right, just to be back in the corner of a field, even with social distancing, just to be back involved with kids again and teaching them the skill of hurling and all the rest of it. Now, this stuff is probably a little bit abstract. Not going to spend too much time on it. It's very much related to my PhD research, but I think it's worth putting out there. And it's called paradox mindset. We kind of know what a paradox is. The official kind of definition, if you like, the most widely accepted one, is that paradoxes are contradictory yet interrelated elements that exist simultaneously and persist over time. So you see yin and yang there. They're all part of the one thing, but again, they're separate. So how many times, Colm or anybody on the call, how many times have you heard a coach or a principal of a school or a teacher or anybody, your boss, said it needs to be one way or the other? And in a minority of cases, things need to be one way or another. But a lot of the time in life, I think they can be both, and they can be both success and failure. They can be both participation and performance. They can be both winning and losing. They can be both positive and negative, and simultaneously means at the same time. One there that I'm very passionate about is the whole area of participation and performance. A massive challenge, if you like, for coaches, especially underage coaches, where you could be dealing with dozens of children at a particular age grade, under 8, under 10, whatever it is. How do I facilitate maximize participation and also performance? It can be done, but it should never be done. Performance should never take precedence over participation. But that's my eye. So I suppose a paradox mindset is probably more about facilitating both participation and performance. And there's a friend of mine, and he has 3 sons, and with full permission, I just asked the children, why do you play sport? I read loads of books, and I'm showing you all those things, those theories and all those other things. But at the end of the day, why am I coaching? And you know, I'm probably doing it for myself to a degree, bit of fresh air and all that kind of stuff I mentioned earlier. But like, it has to be at its deepest level. It has to be facilitating play, imagination, all those wonderful things for children. And if you're ever unsure, sometimes I kind of go off track slightly, and I'm a little bit unsure. You know, maybe it's you're doing a session with the under 10s and it's just not going well. You know, you're maybe not in the best of form, but you know, sometimes I just, when the time is right, I just, to reinforce the whole reason we get out of bed and do this stuff, I just ask the children, and I've asked loads of them, and I encourage you to do it. Why are you here? Why are you playing sport? And their answers are so unaffected like ours. You know, we think of all these positives and negatives, and you know, our responses are complex, but theirs aren't. And I just want you to listen to three little boys. Two are twins, they're 8, and one boy is 10. And just listen to why they play sport. They play hurling and football mostly. Just listen to this.
Because it's a good way to get active, and it's a good way to meet friends and fun play. Because it's healthy for you. It's healthy and it's good for you, and it's a bit fun. And because, like, you can get fit and healthy, and you can get better if you train every day. Like,
the last little
trophies by doing running, jumping. You can get trophies. Come first or second.
So you can see the subtle differences there around their motivations to play sport. But, you know, grouped together, they always come back to the basics: fun, friendship. They want to feel and get better at something. And I did kind of, with the last little boy there, when he mentioned the kind of winning stuff and he's motivated by trophies, I asked him clearly why. You know, why? And he's a really gifted athlete. He's the most incredibly dedicated, lovely little guy. And I just listened to his response. It's really, really fascinating.
What does that mean to you when you get a gold medal or a trophy?
I always dream in bed about getting a trophy in my hand and bringing it home and showing my mum and dad about the golden trophy and silver and bronze.
And why is it important that you dream about it and you like to bring it home? Why is that important to you?
Because, like, I like when I like the color of gold, like brown, silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're rare colors.
And any other reasons you might like to win?
Because when you win, you feel happy when you win.
Yeah, that says it all for me. You know, success is not about either winning or losing. It's not about participation over here, performance over there. Read the national sports policy. There's this huge dichotomy between participation and performance. They're like yin and yang. They're completely reliant on each other. They coexist, and we have to, as coaches, try and stop looking at them in different ways. They are, you know, as I said, reliant on each other. Success as a coach is about both winning and losing. Success is facilitating both participation and performance, as I mentioned earlier. So one guy I really like is Jurgen Klopp. And I to dig pretty hard for this now, I wanted to find something that kind of resonated with firstly with me, and then I felt would resonate with you. And I'm always fascinated by the history of Jurgen Klopp himself. What's his story? Where did he come from? He was a dad at 21 unexpectedly, and he puts, basically, that's the biggest factor that has influenced his ability to deal with young people. Some people probably know that, and I found this gem of an interview that he did with, or it's just a chat with grassroots coaches, ordinary grassroots coaches, soccer coaches from around England. There's one man from Holland there, and just listen to his perception of coaching and why he coaches, or why he used to coach, or where he started off coaching underage soccer.
I have to say I know about what the guys are doing, because I started in a similar situation when I was 21. I always knew I wanted to be a manager, but nobody asks usually for this. And when I was studying sports science and in Frankfurt, I played football in the 3rd division and trained from Eintracht Frankfurt. It's a German Bundesliga team, the under 10. And next year I took the team to the next age, to ULM. And I don't know what he was in the club. Asked me how many new players you want. Do you need? I said, no one. I don't need. I go with the whole team. And they said, no, we don't do it like this. Look in the regional teams where you can get the best players for our club and so on. I'm not interested. I don't have to look. They are good, but they have to develop. And nobody understood this. You have to know decisions about this are really often made by people they don't care. They don't care about the individual. It's only about quality. So to fight for this, to having time, that's really a thing I often think about. My youth coach was like this. He was not the best coach in the world, but he was the one who gave us, at the end, the perfect start position because of his passion for the sport. He did not know much about football, but at the end, he gave us a ball and let us play. But he was always there. At the end, the player by themselves make the decision if they go through or not.
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful piece. It touches on so many things. He was an under 10 coach at 21. You know, he mentioned about his own coach there who was, he said, technically, in terms of the house stuff, didn't know much, just gave them a ball and let them at it. You know, I often wonder, you know, there should be more to coaching than just throwing in a ball, obviously. But, you know, at the same time, if you're respecting the right of children to play, and it is a right, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, Ireland is a signatory of that. We've seen that being introduced in Swedish law, Welsh law, Norwegian law, and there's a few others in the pipeline. But, you know, if you respect the right of the child to play, I think that's just absolutely fundamental. He mentioned as well about, you know, people who don't care in Eintracht Frankfurt. They didn't care about dropping young fellas. And I've seen that as well. I've experienced it as well underage with Limerick and the underage development squads as a player. John Allen, who, you know, I consider a friend, I remember him saying to me before over a cup of tea, it never sat well with him. It doesn't sit well with me dropping players. And I'm the same. Maybe I'm not tenacious enough for inter-county management, and maybe I'm a bit too soft, and that's why I'm better coaching kids. But, you know, I think, you know, the ability to care, children will respond to. And a great quote I came across in this regard was by former US President Theodore Roosevelt, when he said, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And another thing as well that really influences my coaching, and I've only come across this work recently, Susan David, she's a Harvard professor and a psychologist. And this is really, I suppose, a good practical example of the kind of paradox mindset stuff I was talking about earlier. Look at this quote from her book, Emotional Agility. She said that courage is not an absence of fear. Courage is fear walking. So you can see courage and fear, they're living alongside each other simultaneously. Another practical example is I was really excited and happy to come on this webinar tonight, but a part of me was like really nervous as well. So the coexistence of the courage to do it and the fear, they coexist alongside each other. And I think there's a kind of a danger out there that we try and squash down and say eradicate fear. We'll get over that. We'll put it aside and we'll just be courageous. But it doesn't really work like that. Listen to Susan David talking about emotional agility, basically how we navigate our emotions, and not shying away from the uncomforts that life presents us. It's I suppose that dichotomy or that polarization of the positive and the negative. Everything can't be always positive. We should strive for positivity, absolutely. I'm not saying we should strive for negativity, but they coexist and we have to recognize that. Listen to this very, very short piece by Susan David.
Sometimes this push to positivity leads individuals to then ignore what is going on for them, ignore that they are maybe upset, ignore that they might be in the wrong career, sometimes even rationalizing, at least I've got a job. And what I am speaking up against is the idea that emotions are somehow bad, that difficult emotions are negative, that they should be pushed aside, because I believe, and the research again supports this, that emotions are often beacons of things that are important to us. So when you have a sense of disaffection or dissatisfaction or concern, often what it's saying to you is that you are moving away from something of value, or that there's this thing that's important. And so I think that when people simply deny and push aside their emotions in the service of positivity, they actually lose crucial learning. And I also think that that applies not simply to the individual's journey, but to the way a leader might deal with a team's emotions.
It's complex stuff, but I think it's worth putting out there at a basic level. If you're interested in it, just pursue it. There's a mountain of stuff on Google Scholar, YouTube, webinar, podcasts. You know, there's so much great stuff out there. One podcast I love is the Psychology podcast. And I was just listening to it driving home to Limerick one day from Dublin. And I always liked Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It was way ahead of its time. It's basically about, you know, what people need to survive and thrive. Self-actualization at the top, or, you know, peak state is the actualization of your fulfilling of your own potential. The two little things I want to say on it. One, you don't have to master physiological safety, love, or esteem to reach self-actualization. And he started writing about this and kind of regretted the kind of pyramid portrayal of his work. To say that to be in peak performance, he felt that it was kind of almost elitist as he got older. And he actually added, and I don't know if too many people realize this, because I've still seen the hierarchy needs thrown around the place in the last year or two, but before Maslow passed away, he added another dimension to it called transcendence. Now, bear with me on this. Transcendence is imagining, basically. Do you remember the stuff I was showing you there about the children playing in war-torn Syria, the buildings falling all down around them? You know, the same could apply to a child with a parent who, you know, has a substance abuse issue. I've dealt with these children, too many of them, especially in Limerick City when I worked there as a hurling development officer. And, you know, for that hour, when that child comes down to the pitch, that little boy or that little girl, the fact that they turn up is almost a miracle. It's a success in itself, you know. And without, you know, mollycoddling children, you know, like, you don't have to wrap them in cotton wool. They'll be given plenty of adversity to overcome through the game and through learning through the game. But I suppose that the fundamental thing for me here is about facilitating, and this might sound a bit off the wall, but you as a coach, or certainly I as a coach, I strive to facilitate transcendence. Some nights it's better than others, but I like to imagine myself and then translate it into practice that I am taking children, or I'm facilitating, probably standing back more as the years have gone by, into a place of magic. There's nothing like sport. Look, you know, Dr. Colin O'Connor, a Cork man, said before, if you really want to understand what sport does for people, you look at the crowd on All-Ireland final day in Croke Park. Nothing will bring a grown man to his knees and make him cry like sport does, or shout on the sideline, the quietest of people who shout on the sideline and, you know, roar abuse at other people and children. And it's just sport can completely lift people out of the kind of the reality, if you like, for that hour. And for the most part, that's a really, really positive thing. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it isn't actually about achieving your full potential. And I've heard a lot of people saying that they coach to contribute to the achieving of the child or the group's full potential. And that's fine, but it goes deeper than that. It goes to that place of magic that I'm talking about. You know, I love this poem. It's been thrown around before. William E. Henley, Invictus, the movie, Invictus, the book. I've read everything and anything that's ever been written about Nelson Mandela. You know, and this is the poem that kept him going. At the end, it says, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." You know, and I often think of the guy in that movie Shawshank Redemption, when he's inside in the library and he has the music on and his earphones and he's just away. He's just in what some people call flow, but he's not in prison. He's just in a different world. And I think for the hour a week or the 2 hours a week at a blitz or at a training session, that's what we should be striving for as coaches. That certainly is what I strive for and why I coach. So nearly there now. You know, one guy, I suppose, if I had to kind of say who's inspired me or influenced me more than anybody outside of my immediate, you know, social circle, who in the literary world or academic world, it's this guy Seamus Heaney. I've never seen anybody who can write such little amount of words, but the quality and the evoking of the feeling is just absolutely incredible. And you know, Seamus Heaney, in his 50s, I think, said that he has dedicated his life to bridging the gap between reality and the imagination. So he said life is like walking along a ridge. And to be honest, this is probably how I perceive my own life. You walk along a ridge, and to your left is reality, and to your right is your imagination. And he said, if you are constantly looking on the left-hand side over towards reality, it can become just too much to bear. And he said that only for the imagination, he said, we wouldn't survive as individually and as a human race. He said we are imagining creatures, and that's what he dedicated his life to facilitating, in the same way that we should facilitate it for children that we coach. He said that, and it's a profound quote. He said that people like to rise out of the mundane and into the marvelous, and that's a kind of a principle by which I live and which I coach. So, you know, why do I coach? It's getting back to basics. Whether it's you know, under 10s in Mullingar Shamrocks, or if it's the under 12s in Clonakilty, or if it's in Donegal or anywhere, you know, Han and Limerick, children want to play. They want to. You know, they want to imagine, they want to try, let them try, and they need to play as well. And probably something I didn't touch on, and what's his name, Simon Sinek does a lot of good stuff around leadership and safety, and you know, really positive leaders make you feel safe. And so, you know, why do I coach? Obviously I want to teach the children the skills of the game. I want them to be able to play the game. I want them to be able to strike off their left and right, develop their fundamental movement skills, physical literacy. All that house stuff is crucially important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is the only reason, or the only stuff that we should be doing. But at our deepest level, I think that, you know, why do I coach? I want to contribute to children imagining, participating, trying and playing safely. If they win, brilliant, but they won't most of the time, on the pitch or off the pitch in life. So at my deepest level, I'm trying to facilitate, just for an hour, 2 or 3 a week, children to respond to life. This is what those children are doing in Syria. You see it in the refugee camps in Turkey, and just look after you know, the whole place is bombed and torn down. You know, children is the first thing you'll hear when you come out of a place like that. There's no better place for me in the world than being on a schoolyard at break time, especially small break, and just the burst of energy and the sound of children. And probably the nicest piece of work I do in my work with the GA is the Dublin Common and Munster finals, because there's thousands of children come into Croke Park. They pack Croke Park for the final, and it's just children's voices filling the air, positivity, hope, you know, imagination, and just sheer and utter purity. So what am I doing as a coach? At my deepest level, I'm facilitating and contributing to the facilitation of children to respond to life, to rise up out of the mundane and into the marvelous, and to experience transcendence and awe. It might seem off the wall, but I hope that I have given you some kind of a snapshot around why I coach. And as I said at the start, I really hope that I have, maybe just provoked a feeling within you or some thought as to maybe why you get out of bed every Saturday or Sunday morning. Gord Magwith.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, Pat. If anyone has any questions, you can throw them into the chat function and we'll read them out. But as I said to you beforehand, Pat, if I'm quiet for a long time, it's a good sign that everything is explainable enough.
As long as I didn't put you to sleep there, Colin, you know.
Not at all. No, really interesting stuff. And I suppose I suppose in my line of work, we'd come across a lot of this stuff, but the stuff that you showed me, I'd say I've only probably seen 10% of it, you know. So I just want to say thanks very much for willingness to share that stuff, and I suppose to share your own thoughts and open yourself up a small bit as well there in regards what way you do it. There's no questions yet. As I said, if anyone has any questions during the chat function, and if not, Pat's details are there. People can get in touch with you. You have the blog there on the website and on Twitter as well, so there's no problem there. I suppose as I said, from a coaching perspective, as I said, I thought the interesting part was the success, you know, and how you, I suppose, broke it down that, like as I said, it has been a thing in the GA for years and years and years, and even now, at this time of the COVID-19, you know, the teams want to get back and they want to win their championship, and you know, it's something that we're conscious of in Cork, and I think all the underage groups in Cork are just going to play a league format to play as many games as possible to give the children a chance to play, as opposed to playing a straight knockout championship. So I think it's very interesting, and I think it's something that every coach that's on with us definitely got something out of, and everyone that listens afterwards will get something out of it as well. Have you anything else to add, Pat, before we finish up? As I said, there's no questions coming in. As I said, it's usually a good sign. As I said, you explained everything fairly well. And I know, like, some of the stuff there it does go a lot deeper, like the Maslow stuff, and you were talking about the yin and the yang as well, and like that's a whole different world once we start going into them, like, isn't it?
It is. Like, I delivered something similar to this before on developing a coaching philosophy, and it kind of turned a lot of people off. And I know that this kind of presentation isn't everyone's cup of tea. I know that, but you know, at a basic level, Colin, I would just encourage anyone. I think if you're taking the time out, which you're doing, to come on here this evening, it says something about you, you know, as a coach. And I just maybe ask it, why am I doing this? You know, really and truly, why am I doing it? And I think if you can synergize it with, like I showed the little quotes there of the three young fellas, if you can kind of synergize it with, you know, with what they want, ask the group, you know, why are you? It might sound a bit mad, but like maybe individually or to 2 or 3 kids together, why do you play? Yeah. Why are you here? You know, and
I agree with you. Like, and it is something I actually will encourage coaches to do that before we get up and running again, because I suppose a lot of the time, and you mentioned that the stakeholders, the people who make the decisions, are probably not the people that are most affected by the decisions. And the greatest stakeholder in the GA, especially from our perspective of dealing with kids, is the kids. And very, very rarely do we actually ask them their opinion and their thoughts and stuff. And like, look, they're not going to give us a PhD or a thesis on their thoughts, but they're going to give us the truth, which is very important. And I suppose for coaches as well, it'll probably ground them a small bit that, you know, it's not about winning every game. It's about making sure that when Johnny comes down, if he wants to play with Timmy, and maybe they do a small bit of messing, and we split them up every night, maybe that's not the best thing for them, you know, just because it was something that was done when we were kids, when you kept the messes apart. But as I said, I think coaching has evolved now, and that kids are a lot more engaged throughout the training sessions, because the coaches I think they're better equipped nowadays than they were when we were children.
Yeah, like in the Office of the Children Ombudsman does a lot of great work around defining participation and what does that mean, you know. And I didn't go into it too much, but the participation, I suppose, often for a GA coach, and my own up to recently, was let the children play, you know, give them an opportunity to play. But it's way deeper than that. It's about involving them in the decision-making process of, you know, pretty much everything they're involved in. And that's why you see a lot more children on school councils and things like that. I think ultimately it's a positive thing.
Yeah, and I think, like you've mentioned, play an awful lot tonight. You know, it's been a large part of the presentation. And I think there is a lot more research backing up out there now at the moment. I think, like, I know Owen Mooney is doing, I think his doctorate is basically around the area of play. So even getting those people that are able to share, I suppose, like a lot of the things you'll do naturally yourself, but you won't have a name for what you're doing. And when you hear about it, you go, oh yeah, sure, I'm kind of doing that. But when, as I said, when you're able to put terms behind it and put sort of facts and stats behind it, that this is what the importance of it and this is it, I think it'll become a lot more important in the coming years. So no, that's great. Do you just want to put up your contact details there again, Pat, before we go? And I'll leave it at that. I think it can just get you. And as I said, I'll have this on podcast and I'll be on YouTube within sort of by noon tomorrow at the latest. Pat, you've been very good for your time. It was really interesting. As I said, it was plenty of key points for everybody to take away. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you all join us again next week. We'll have Dr. Ed Culhane on, and I think that'll probably be our last coach education one for the summer, because I'd imagine we'll all be mad to get out in the pitches after that. So thanks very much, Pat.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.